Well, let's discuss this now. And the law, or should we say what the law says about a National Assembly quorum. And we're joined by Professor Cathy Powell, who is a constitutional law expert from the University of Cape Town. Professor, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Can I simply put this way? Can a political party sabotage the election of a president in Parliament by refusing to participate?
No, it cannot. Not unless it has 2/3 of the NA seats, in which case I doubt it would need to. Because the quorum for decisions such as electing a president is 1/3 of the seats of Parliament. So 1/3 of the eligible members of the NA need to be in the NA to take a decision on anything other than the passing of a bill. So 58 seats, 15% of the NA being absent makes no difference whatsoever.
Very interesting indeed. Moloto Mutapo there, the spokesperson in the National Assembly, saying that the Chief Justice is going to be the one that leads these proceedings and what happens next. Are you able to guide us through these steps, Professor?
Well, the Schedule 3 to the Constitution sets out the general rules for an election, that, you know, somebody has to be nominated, there need to be 2 nominators per person, and that the nominated person has to sign acceptance. There are a couple of formal rules that have to be met, formal steps that have to be met. And then the Chief Justice will simply take everybody through those steps. I remember one year when there was a lot of complaints from various members of parties that a particular nomination was irrational, which the Chief Justice did not give much time to. So there can be some objections, some hazing, I suppose. But generally, the Chief Justice takes everybody through the process of choosing a speaker and then choosing a president. And it will be a simple majority of the quorum, of the people who are there, that will decide that question. Once the speaker is elected, then the speaker can start to actually run the business of Parliament, and that will include getting a deputy speaker and getting all the MPs ready to do their job.
Talk to us about what would need to happen, Professor, for a re-election, or should I say a fresh election, to be triggered. Because, as I understand it, within 30 days, if a president is not elected within 30 days, that fresh election could be triggered. What could possibly happen within Parliament to cause it to not be able to hold the necessary meeting that will ultimately produce the election of a president?
Well, if the various minority parties, because they're now all minority parties, can't agree on a president, if they can't reach the coalitions that they need to get 50% plus 1 of members of Parliament to vote for a specific person, then they end up not being able to elect a president. It's similar to the situation that we saw in the House of Congress, when fights within the Republican Party meant that a Speaker of the House of Congress could not be elected. This is a test for the maturity of our democracy. So let us hope that we pass. I'm sure it is in the interests of the larger parties, so most of them, maybe MK is the exception, that Parliament can actually keep moving and get its job done. So they will want to reach a solution together.
And that indeed is dependent on exactly what you say, the political maturity of these political parties. Perhaps as a parting shot, Professor Powell, we are about to get into those negotiations. It is going to be in a very short space of time. At least we've had one political party come to this station to say that they have already been contacted by the ANC, that's the Patriotic Alliance, in order to get into these negotiations. The fact of the matter here, Prof, is that within 14 days, these parties must have come together and agree or arrange, come to some kind of arrangement so that by the time they get to Parliament, they have a pathway. Talk to us about what needs to happen in as far as these parties coalescing together. Keep in mind that in 1994, we had that government of national unity, and these parties, though, they apparently had about 18 months in order to try and stitch this together. In this instance, there's very little time.
You know, you need to speak to somebody who specializes in politics, but I think even more you need the insiders from all these parties, because obviously if they're going to work together, they're going to want to some extent to have their party position respected. I'm thinking, for example, of the huge gap between the ANC and the DA on Israel. That's going to be one problem. But the other thing they're also going to want is to have some influence on how the daily business of Parliament and of government goes forward. So the jockeying between the parties is going to involve who has which positions of influence and which policy positions those parties are going to take. And you're right, now that you put it like that, it sounds like an almost insurmountable task for a very short space of time. So, you know, as I said, let's hold thumbs for lots of maturity. Perhaps the parties will need to establish simply a starting position and try to work together in good faith. And if it is possible for parties to accept that they have different political viewpoints, but they accept each other as reasonable human beings, then some form of cooperation should be possible.
Prof, thank you very much for your time and the ability for you to venture into politics a little bit. Professor Cathy Powell, a constitutional law expert from the University of Cape Town.